Halito, and welcome to Native Chalk Talk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive, while also sharing with you our Native culture, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And I hope you'll do me a favor. Feel free to like and share these episodes. I so appreciate it. Yakuki.
I wanted to serve my country, but I joined the National Guard at 17 years old, and I went to basic training in between my junior and senior year. About 3 years in, I volunteered to go to Afghanistan, and I learned a lot about the Mongolian culture. I learned a lot about the Afghan culture. That opened my eyes that there's so much difference in the world, and a lot of people, they've never seen, just the privilege that sometimes we may have.
See and share our stories at togetherwe'remore.com.
You're listening to part 2 of this series.
I'd like to discuss something that's extremely important. Native American veterans face some of the highest rates of suicide among all veteran populations in the United States. According to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, Native American and Alaska Native veterans have suicide rates approximately 20 to 30% higher than the national average for veterans. Factors contributing to this crisis include historical trauma, cultural disconnection, lack of access to culturally competent care, and geographic isolation, particularly in rural tribal areas. Now, despite their high rates of military service and deep commitment to protecting the nation, Native veterans often encounter systemic barriers to mental health support and recovery, making community-led, culturally grounded interventions critically important. So you're doing incredible work now with the Choctaw Nation in behavioral health. Can you tell us about your role and what inspired you to work in this field?
My job now in behavioral health is I work in suicide prevention for tribal veterans through a VA-funded grant called Staff Sergeant Fox, Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox. He was a 25-year-old soldier who died by suicide. And our specific program for the Choctaw Nation is called Warrior Wellness. And as far as I know, there's about 4 Staff Sergeant Fox grants throughout the state of Oklahoma. There's us and Choctaw Nation. Cherokee Nation has one. There's a program based outside of Tulsa, and there's one up in Woodward. So my job, I'm a peer support specialist, which means I've struggled with suicide in the past, and I've been able to overcome it. And now I'm able to help others. I'm blessed to be able to help others. And so I'm also a case manager too for my job. And so I'm kind of able to wear both hats and have some flexibility, as far as like helping someone navigate through some issues that they may be facing, in any kind of facet, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, or spiritually. I try to help our participants get those kinds of resources. We do coffee groups. We recently started a jiu-jitsu class to help our veterans get more active and, remind themselves that they do still have that warrior mindset, even if they're still not in service. And and then I'm actually kicking up a hiking group this month, and potentially a kayaking group. I'm going to see what the numbers are on this first hiking group that we have, and then we also do guided fishing trips over here at Texoma and around Durant, or Lake Eufaula and McAllister, or Broken Bow Lake, or Pine Creek down in Valiant. So we try to get our participants just more involved out in nature. Not only our participants, but also their family members, because, we want them to have that 24/7 accessibility, and we want their
Yeah.
family members to be able to go out there and enjoy that sort of stuff too. To take time away from the hustle and bustle of daily life, to be able to step away from your phone, to be able to step away briefly from your job, to be able to go out in nature and reconnect, um, in whichever fashion that looks like for our veterans.
It sounds like community, being active, and really getting out in nature tend to be the three things that you just mentioned that can support someone who's going through those things. Would you agree?
Yes, yes.
Is there anything that friends, family members, anyone that knows that veteran, is there anything we can do to support, when they're going through those times? Do we know they're going through those times? How do we help more?
I've been able to learn a lot more about myself and my job. And
Oh, I bet.
you know, you you have to learn to you have to meet people where they are. You truly do. And it could be something as simple as, hey, would you mind if we go for a walk for a little bit? We can walk and talk, or you want to go get something to take them to their favorite restaurant, or get them their favorite burger, or something to connect with. And I believe that anyone, you know, if two people go through the same event or incident, or what have you, they're gonna they're gonna have this a different perspective on it.
Totally.
But what I've what I've learned is, so working in this job and working in a psych hospital for 7 years with DHS custody juveniles, and also working in a jail for 3 years, and just my time with the first responder stuff. What I've learned is that humans feel emotions, and they just, I tell them all the time. Especially my nephews, I've been kind of mentoring them here lately. Um, emotions are like waves, ocean waves. Sometimes they're up and down, and you just have to let them flow.
Mm.
But I believe you also do have to put in that work to navigate through that. And, a lot of that is through just connecting with them, just sitting down, talking with them, meet them where they are in that moment, and helping ground them. Um, and, a lot of people, they're, society is really difficult right now, the economy and every other kind of factor. And so just sitting there, just listening, having mindfulness and just listening, emotional intelligence, whichever way you want to call it. Um, just sitting there listening with them,
Mm.
taking in of what they're saying. I'm not a therapist or anything, um, but I know what's helped me, um, help me navigate myself.
Because you've been there. You
And
totally get it.
a lot of people, they may not have that outlet. They may not have that person, any kind of
Yeah.
person they can talk to, which is unfortunate. But yeah, you meet people where they are. How about some breath work? 4 seconds in the nose, hold for 7 seconds, release out for 8 seconds.
Mhm.
Going outside for a nature walk,
Yeah.
or even just walking barefoot on the grass, you know? And
Hmm.
that's a lot of people don't realize with that too, is that is actually grounding, um,
Yep.
I believe, the negative ions in your body, that when you have too many positive ions, it causes your body to kind of get more anxious, more impatient, or maybe a little more irritable. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize that. I've been sharing that with my nephews here lately, mentoring them. like what I do, but if I'm, feeling like depressed or not wanting to do anything, I'll go take a shower. I may take like a 15, 20 minute, 30-minute nap. And then that kind of gives me that extra boost
Hmm.
because because I am a big believer in, getting enough sleep. So for me, like I'll usually stop drinking caffeine by 12. So after
Okay.
12,
So you can
I don't
sleep.
have practicing gratitude, which is really, really difficult. I'm still working on that myself. Um, but just, getting more in touch with nature,
Yeah.
I think would help. Getting more involved outside, even if it's just a quick walk around the neighborhood, you know, take a quick walk and, see how you feel afterwards. But I believe that true growth comes from just having daily discipline. If you can have daily discipline, and then if you, it's a hard pill to swallow, but I believe it is necessary for every single person, that people have to realize that nobody is coming to save you. You have to be the one to pull yourself out of how you're feeling, and you have to want that change
Yeah.
because nobody is going to do it for you. You have to you have to have that daily discipline to want that change and to realize that you have to be the hero of your own story, as Joe Rogan quoted.
Per Joe Rogan. So, if someone listening today is a Choctaw veteran in need of support or knows someone who is, where can they reach out?
I know they can call the Choctaw Nation at 580-924-8280. And then they would just ask to be transferred over to Warrior Wellness Behavioral Health Department. And that would ring them over towards our building on Evergreen. And then they can speak to myself or my coworker.
And well, thank you for what you're doing in that realm. I know it is desperately needed in many cases, and you are someone who really gets it because you've been there and you understand what many of these folks are going through. Well, let's switch gears a bit. You grew up in Idabel, Oklahoma, as we mentioned, where your family has deep roots. And Idabel is in McCurtain County, which is a very historical Choctaw area. And you talked about how much things have changed there in McCurtain County. Tell us about that.
Idaho's changed a lot since I grew up. I remember we didn't have a subway until my going into my senior year of high school. And I believe now we have a Domino's. Um, there's different little sections that have been built, especially within for Choctaw Nation. Like we have like a HR building and some
Yeah.
other stuff that's been added on, which is great. Um, it adds for more employment for people around that area. Now Hochatown is a lot different. There was one small gas station right as you went over to the lakeside, and now there's all sorts of stuff all over the place. It seems like every time I go, they're building something different. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Lots of Airbnbs too.
yeah,
Well, and what would you like people to know about the people of McCurtain County, the Choctaws there?
I would say that we are we're still there. We are still resilient. Um, and there's deep Choctaw ties, as you had stated. We're built different down there. Growing up from there, um, and having moved to different places within the nation, um, down there, growing up, you have to fight for everything that you get, and it's really humbling to be able to come from that environment of where I grew up, and to be able to be in the position I am now is a huge blessing for me. I love my job. I love what I do. I have a purpose every day. Not a lot of people make it out. Um, if I had to guess, that just because being from there, it is. And then I moved back for a year after I left the military. I gave myself 1 year. I said, I'm going to stay there for 1 year, just kind of figure things out. And then I'm going to move off because I knew um, I wouldn't have, I may, miss out on an opportunity or get sucked back into living around McCurtain County. And I didn't want that. Um, After having traveled and having gone through military experiences and being overseas, and I knew how different it was being home, and I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to live there for much longer, no longer than a year. And you definitely see things differently, even just outside of the reservation. You see things. It gives you a more appreciative outlook, I believe, for every tribal member out there, no matter where you go in life, that you'll be a tribal member of your specific tribe until the day you die. Whether if that's living on the reservation or living on the other side of the world. And I am proud to say that I am from McCurtain County. I am from Idaville. It's growing up down there, it's different because it's kind of like a dog eat dog world down there. There's a lot more roughness than there is kindness, positivity. At least it was when I grew up in the neighborhood I grew up in.
Where we're from shapes who we are, obviously, and we can do with that as we will. We can turn it into a positive, we can grow from it, and we can mentor others, whatever the case is. I think you're just like a shiny testament to that. Now, speaking of McCurtain County, you had mentioned to me once that you have some ghost stories, and I love a good ghost story. So I have to ask, can you share some of your favorites?
This was before the whole back acreage had overgrown. By the time we moved out, it looked like a forest. The moon was out, and you could kind of see, it was almost kind of like shotgun style. You could see like two orbs kind of next to each other. And then it was like one of them just kept growing and growing. And it was just, I was like, it kind of looked like the size of a round hay bale. And the other one was kind of just, it was smaller, but it was sitting next to it. And I remember it just kind of, he pointed it out too. He was like, "Hey, does that look like that thing's getting bigger? Like it's growing?" And then I looked closer. I was like, "Oh yeah." It was right before the sun came up. And not too long after that, it was like a vehicle moving at a high rate of speed. It sounded like you kind of heard like a vehicle had crashed. Me, we both looked at each other. We were like, "What was it?" So we kind of move around, try to take a look because there's trees that cover the highway. We see some random lady. She sprints up to the house next door to us. The lady, she was just knocking, like frantically, like out of desperation, knocking and knocking. And but we're at this point, we're kind of like laying down on the grass, just staring next door. And this was right before the sun came up. I was like, I'm gonna go sneak around the front of their house on the other side because there's trees. So I said, I'll be hidden. If someone had opened the door, and I guess she had like just like jumped into the house like head first. Or like I don't know, like sprinted into the house and like threw her arms back and pushed like swung her head into the house first. I don't know. Kaiser said he saw it. I didn't see it.
Oh
So
my gosh, that's terrifying. Ghost activity in McCurtain County. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that creepy story. Well, today I have definitely learned a lot. And hopefully, our listeners also will have taken away some ideas for how to support those who are going through a lot, especially our Native veterans. Before we go, Taylor, what words of wisdom would you like to share with our listeners? Maybe a message for other Native veterans or families listening today.
take things day by day. Take it one day at a time. Um, Maybe if you feel yourself start getting down or you start having some thoughts, tell yourself, how about I just make it through today? How about I make it through breakfast? How about I make it to lunch? How about I make it to dinner? And then get a journal and write about your day. Put it on paper. If you are unable to express those words and emotions to somebody, if you don't have anybody, you can write it down. Just know that there is help out there, but it is on each individual person to want that help and to have that daily discipline and to realize that there is help and advice and guidance and wisdom, however you want to call it. But it is on each individual person to be the hero of their own story and to take that challenge and take that courage, take that anger, take that sadness, take that depression, and put it towards something purposeful, to redefine your purpose or to find your purpose if you've never had one. And just stay curious about the world and always remember to be kind.
Very well said. And as we close today's conversation, we're reminded that service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. For many Native veterans like Teyler, the journey continues in how they serve their people, protect their culture, and heal the wounds, both seen and unseen, that come from carrying the weight of generations and of war. To our Native veterans, we see you, we honor you, and we thank you. Your strength is in your story, and your story matters. If you or a loved one is a Native veteran in need of support, please know help is out there and you are not alone. As Teyler shared, there's a place for you to reconnect, to heal, and to be heard. Please take time to thank and spend time with our veterans. After all, it's the very least we can do to thank them for their service. Yakoki.
Thanks for listening to Native Chalk Talk. Be sure to join our community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at nativechalktalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.